Yeah, highlight and destroyed. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, you guys. We're going to get started. We're not going to torture the authors any longer. So I am Maricia Gabriel. Oh, I'm frozen. Everyone's frozen. This is crazy. Can you hear me? Ay. Can you hear me?
Oh no. I can hear you.
You can hear me. I'm going to keep going because you can hear me, even though everyone's frozen on my screen. This is so crazy. I know. It's okay.
You're not frozen.
Okay.
Technology.
I know. The technology is crazy. So I'm Maricia Gabriel, and I want to welcome everyone. So good morning for the West Coast, good afternoon for the East Coast, and good evening for the UK. And if anyone else is here from any other part of Europe, because I did invite some French people, but we'll see. So thank you for coming and supporting the authors. I'm reading from my little notes here. Thank you for coming and supporting the authors.
I can hear them now.
You can hear who now?
Okay.
Amy Thompson.
Is everyone, can everyone mute, please? Let's see. There we go. Okay. So, all right. So thank you for coming and supporting the authors. Just to give you a little background, we are concluding a 5-week course, 5-week writing course. And so what you're about to hear today is the result of actually just 4 weeks. We met 2 times a week for 4 weeks because today is the beginning of our 5th week.
Wow.
And they did not come in with these stories. So I just want you to understand and get an appreciation of just how much work the authors have put into what they're going to share with you today. And at the same time, these are works in progress. These are early drafts. And so it means a lot that they have invited you to share in this experience with them, because it's not easy to share, right? Works in progress with loved ones and strangers. So know that what you hear today may change later as they continue to grow and expand. Oh, there's some people in the waiting room. As they continue to grow, thank you for telling me that. As they continue to grow and expand their work. We have people from all kinds of backgrounds here, as you'll see when they share their author bio. Some are visual artists, some have journalism backgrounds, some have, therapy background. You'll see it all. Okay, now as the audience, you are now a part of the program, because this author reading is one of the quote unquote assignments or the activities that the authors do in order to develop a writer's mindset and to develop the confidence it is to present the work to the public. So thank you for being a part of this journey with them. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of the course today and for supporting them, staying all the way to the end. Each author, we have 6 authors, they're gonna read about 10 minutes each. And it's really great if you stay to the end. And also you can acknowledge after each one has read with the reaction button has a little clap thing, or even clap in the screen. Let's see, anything else? Oh, please type your questions and comments in the chat box. And that way I can capture them and I can share with them at the end. Please do have something for them at the end. We want to treat this is a real author reading, and it would be nice if you have some questions for them about their writing process. Oh, everyone turn their mics off, sit back and enjoy these 6 beautiful authors. Okay, Grace, take it away. Betty, Grace is going to introduce you.
This is my mic.
Everybody, please make sure you're muted. Thank you.
How do I do that? I'm
challenged.
I'll
mute you. I'll mute you, Karen. I got you. Okay. And we're off. Go ahead, Grace. Hit it.
Right. Well, I've got the pleasure of introducing Betty Somocurcio Leon, who grew up in Lima, Peru, an avid reader of authors in 3 languages, Spanish, French, and English. Betty is also an administrator, translator, and has a degree in journalism. At the beginning of the 80s, she went to study linguistics and French civilization in Paris, France. She returned to Peru after 5 years and worked for the Swiss Development Cooperation, SDC, for 10 years. At the same time, she worked as a translator for the International Red Cross in Lima. In 1999, she started working for Peru Monitor, SAC, a publishing company, as general manager and editorial associate. When Betty's name appeared in an extended list of journalists labeled as enemies of the regime, she decided to leave Peru, emigrating to the USA in 2002. Like any other immigrant, Betty had to start life over by building a career in her new country, gaining proficiency in English and becoming an American citizen in 2011. She currently works for an important non-profit organization in San Francisco as operations manager.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm a little nervous, as normal. I'm going to read you for a few minutes our work in all these weeks. And this story is based on true events. And well, let's see how do you hear them. Okay. Climbing the plane staircase for the first time in his life, Felipe knew there was no turning back. At 19 years old, he was considered a juvenile in his country, Peru, still under his parents' care. The sharp and determined Felipe took advantage of a Sunday dinner to make his parents promise to allow him to travel somewhere in Europe with his friend Nicolas, a guy that was introduced to Felipe by one of his cousins during a recent party. Nicolas was 20 years old, and like Felipe, he couldn't attend college due to the critical political situation in the country that has paralyzed so many organizations. Nicolas convinced Felipe that leaving the country was the smartest thing to do, with the intention to try their luck and find their destiny. While boarding the plane that will take him from Lima to Zurich in Switzerland, Felipe had a vivid memory of the conversation he had with his parents 3 months ago. He was so nervous. Dad, Mom, Felipe started a conversation at the table. I need to tell you something important and I hope you will take it well. Dad responded, what's going on, son? You are scaring me. Me too, Mom follows. Felipe continued. Remember my friend Nicolas, the tall guy that has been visiting me lately and we went to play bowling together? We were talking about the opportunities that we have in the middle of this chaos this country has become. You know, all schools are closed since almost 10 months and there is no solution in sight. Dad replied, yes, we are all affected and even my work at the company is in jeopardy. We don't know indeed when all this disorder and turbulence will end. Being involved in the unrest could only worsen the situation for everyone. I don't want you or your friends in prison or dead. Mom reacted while taking Dad's and Felipe's hands. Oh, please, do not say that. I can't even hypothetically think of losing my only child. Precisely, Felipe said. This is the reason of what I'm going to tell you now. I wish to travel to Europe with Nicolas, both of us together, with the intention to stay and to luckily find a better situation than this one. Dad quickly responded, "Are you crazy? Both of you are too young to undertake such a trip and it's too far away." It was quite unusual for middle-class families to travel to Europe at that time. Mom said while looking straight into Dad's eyes and implying her support to Felipe's wishes, "I would prefer my son far away and alive than living with fear each day he leaves the house." Dad concluded looking at Mom. "I do not agree. He needs to be patient because this situation is not going to last forever." Felipe knew his dad was the most difficult to convince when he was against something. Felipe continues talking without paying attention to what his dad just said, while looking to his mom. "I want to count on you both, and also I would like to ask you for your financial support." Dad responded right away while looking Felipe straight in the eyes. "Felipe, you know we are not wealthy. How can you expect to get financial support from us?" "I am not asking for full financial support," said Felipe, "but for a partial financial support that you can provide without endangering our family. I have some savings from all the jobs I had during the last months. I think we should consider Felipe's wishes and his request," Mom meddled, putting one hand on Dad's shoulder and continued. "He is young but resolute and cautious. We can give him an opportunity. Who knows if he is right and finds his fate abroad. Maybe he will return to us when he finds that living abroad without his family around is not what he wanted to. We should not cut his wings. Remember yourself before marrying me. You were also an adventurer, and your father always imposed his will, not allowing you to go anywhere without his permission. Do you want to do the same with our son after so much complaints about your late father?" Felipe tried to reassure his parents, looking first at one of them, then at the other. "Give me 6 months to establish myself abroad, and if I fail, I promise I will be back home and will pay you back any money you can give me for my trip." Felipe was very aware that his middle-class family was not opulent. His father was a civil engineer working for a private construction company, and his mother was a middle school teacher. Therefore, the expected financial support Felipe was going to get was less than moderate. Dan responded after some time in silence, digesting the news and looking at Mom. "Let me think about. I will discuss this with your mother in private," Dad said, adding, "I might accept to sign the authorization for your travel, but there is a precondition. You have to prepare yourself, find another people's support in Europe, and do not rely only on Nicholas. Finally, get the documents you need for this trip. Neither me nor your mom will move a thing to help you out. If you want to establish yourself abroad, you must start now proving you are capable enough to conduct yourself without our assistance." Felipe replied, showing a big smile and knowing he has gotten what he was asking for. "Not a problem. I will prove you that I am ready to be an adult. Thank you so much." Then stood up and gave a kiss on their cheeks to both of his parents. Dubious at the start, Felipe's parents gave Felipe the best emotional and financial support they could. Deciding to go away, leaving behind a country in permanent turmoil was not difficult. Knowing that he could not have his parents close enough to help him if things turned bad was much worse. But Felipe was resolved to have a life, a true independent life. Few days later, Felipe brought home the paperwork needed for his parents to sign the trip authorization. Felipe got very busy organizing his journey, searching to find resources and points of contact in Europe. Of course, almost everyone he reached out thought he was only a young idealist that will be back very quickly from his risky adventure. Getting the Peruvian passport at that time was something difficult, long, and expensive. It was 1977. Incidents started since the moment he arrived with his parents at the airport to board the aircraft. Nicolas, who convinced him to travel to Europe, was already waiting at the airport. He pulled Felipe on the side and whispers on his ear. He was not traveling to Europe. Felipe, shocked, said, "What? Is this one of your jokes? This is not funny at all." Nicolas replied, "It is not a joke. I am serious. I can travel with you to Europe. I'm traveling, but not to Europe, only locally to the north of the country. My parents didn't agree to sign the authorization papers." Felipe, looking pale and opening his eyes wide, continued, "Why you didn't tell me anything before? You said that everything was okay, that your parents were as supportive as mine. You lied to me." Nicolas responded, "You were so happy and decided to initiate this travel. I didn't want to throw cold water on your desires, neither for you to become discouraged. I know you can do it. Do it by yourself. I am sure you can." Then Nicolas extended his hand, giving Felipe a business card he was holding, and continued, "Look, take this business card from a girl that lives in Paris who I met 2 months ago. She said I was welcome to visit her if I come to Paris one day," concluded Nicolas. Felipe took the business card and replied, "But I don't know who she is. I don't know her. And she will expect you, not me. You are a total failure, Nicolas. I can't believe it." Then he added, begging Nicolas, "Please, do not tell my parents a word that you are not coming with me, please." Nicolas responded while laughing, ending the conversation, "No worries, I won't. They will see both of us going through the immigration area, and they will not notice when I take other direction. I won't say anything to them. I wish you luck. Maybe I can visit you in the future. Please, let's keep us in touch." Felipe's parents didn't notice what has happened and stayed in the airport until Felipe and Nicolas went through the immigration process. Inside, both said goodbye to the other and took separate destinations. Felipe notified his parents about this first setback at the beginning of his trip only when he landed in Zurich, Switzerland, 16 hours later. That's it.
Thank you, Betty. Can you, and Betty wrote that in a second language, right? Your first language being Spanish, and having
Yes.
to write this in a second language.
Yes.
Betty, can you introduce the next author? Do you have the author bios?
Yes, I have it. It's Kelly. Okay. Kelly grew up in London, United Kingdom. She went to university in the seaside town of Brighton and then spent 6 years in Scotland, where she did her master's in social work at Stirling University. After some time traveling the world, she convinced her Scottish father to move to London, and they lived there with their 3-year-old twins. Kelly is reading a piece initially inspired by a character in a children's story her father wrote. Kelly?
Yeah, hello everybody. Okay, here we go. It's late when Isla pulls up outside the cabin. It's been a long drive and she's keen to get inside, but sits in the car a few moments, steeling herself before making the dash through the cold, wet night. It's almost 20 years since she last visited, and she's not sure how she feels about being back. She steps straight into the living room as she pushes through the door. Everything is smaller than she remembers, but there's a familiar comfort. The log fire framed with heavy stone tiles up either side, cracked with age and darkened by soot. The heavy mantelpiece in the same thick grey stone, lined with books she and her brother would read when it was raining. The small kitchen at the back of the room, made up of an old stove and deep sink. She wonders if the stove still works after all these years abandoned to the cold. The two huge windows are just as she remembers and take up most of one wall. Rain lashes against the glass, but on a clear night you would see the sky littered with milky stars. It's almost as cold inside as it is out, and she decides to skip dinner and go straight to bed. The pipes creak as she turns on the tap to do her teeth, and it takes a while before the water starts to dribble out. It's too cold for the nightdress she bought, so she cuddles into a tracksuit, bottoms tucked into thick socks, and climbs into an old metal bed. She sinks into the soft, lumpy mattress and pulls a thick duvet and scratchy woolen cover up around her shoulders and chin. She drifts asleep to the sound of rain and the whip and whistle of wind against the cabin roof and walls. Waking early, Isla wraps the wall cover over her shoulders before she pads out of the bedroom. Thankfully, she'd remembered to buy firelighters and a newspaper at a service station on her drive up, and she manages to get a fire going with these and some old wood still stacked by the fireside. The room starts to heat up almost instantly. She looks over at the small brown sofa patterned with white flowers, and her mind flashes to the last time they'd been here. She'd caught her hand on a nail, reaching for a ball on the cabin roof. She and her brother Liam had been arguing about whose fault it was that the ball had ended up there, but he stopped shouting as soon as he saw she was hurt and carried her inside. He boiled a pot of water on the old stove and found some Dettol under the sink. He held her hand gently in the hot, stinging water and wrapped one of his t-shirts around it to stem the blood until their mum could come back and wrap it up properly. She found them on the sofa, Liam's arm swung over Isla's shoulder, telling her a story as she held her hurt hand over the back of the sofa. Although her name is Scottish, Isla and her mum and her grandmother, who the cabin belongs to, all live in London. She'd been to the Highland cabin with her mum and big brother Liam every summer from before she could remember until the last visit all those years ago. Liam was 5 years older than she was, so he must have been almost 16 that summer. He was tall for his age and had a flop of sandy hair that always looked like he'd just gotten out of bed. His smile was wide and he had an easy air about him that made others feel relaxed. It had been too painful to visit in the years that followed, too many memories living in the cold air, too many ways to remember all they'd lost. And as the years passed, the cabin became a magical realm of their childhood, and she'd been too scared to visit in case her memory had been lying about this happy, carefree place. Isla blinked against the sting in her eyes and turned to look out of the window at the wet browns and oranges set against grey sky. She'd never been here in the autumn. The light was different and there was a different feel to the air. Thicker maybe, heavy. In the summer, she and Liam would skim scones on the loch and walk through the mountains in search of the elusive white deer among the red herd. They never did see one, but the red deer, backs dappled with white spots, were just as magical to them. Their ears would point high at the children's footsteps approaching, and they would huddle in against the stag, downy antlers crowning his head. Liam would tap her when it was time to go home for something to eat. His belly could always tell the time. It stayed light until well past 10, and she and Liam would stay up late watching the changing sky through the windows. On different nights, the cool blues gave way to soft pinks and purples or hot reds and burnt orange, as the sun lowered behind the mountains. The mountains would be thick with coarse grass and spiky green and purple thistles. Dots of buttery yellow gorse flowers nestled in their prickly bushes, and large patches of ground would be covered in pinky purple heather. Even in the summer, everything here had a solid, thick, fierce beauty, which only hardened with the cold weather. When it rained and they couldn't explore, they played board games, and Liam would tell her local legend stories. There were so many stories he told her, she could scarcely recall them all, but there was one that he'd tell again and again. She didn't remember how many times she'd heard the Pumpkin King, but she could remember every word. Legend has it that the Pumpkin King appears on All Hallows Eve, as the village honours the changing of the season and marks a transition from long days to dark nights. When blue skies turn mottled grey, damp air pulls the heaven low onto the mountains, and the Pumpkin King can slip through the clouds onto the ground for one night. Liam described him so well that Isla could hold a clear picture of the Pumpkin King in her mind. His loose robes, the blue-black of a cloudless night, flowing around his thin body to envelope all but his head and hands. Chestnut hair sticks out in knobbly clumps on his round head. His face is lined and mounds of thick skin grow in clusters across his cheeks and forehead. His eyes are marbled with white, blue and yellow, huge gobstoppers shining out from the shadows that encircle him. His wrinkled hands are like shriveled orange leaves, still moist but twisting in on themselves and crunching at the edges. The Pumpkin King hides among the children from the village as they go door to door trick-or-treating, and they delight at him crunching into candied apples handed out. The adults can't see him hidden amongst the masked ghouls and paper-hatted witches, and the children giggle and huddle around him when he turns to them, finger over his lips, if any of the adults look quizzically at the group. And when it's time for the children to go home, the Pumpkin King skips over the mountains, wind blowing under his robe, chest sharp with cold as he gulps mouthfuls of fresh air. He swims in the loch, butter flying through the water, and slides across the moss-covered rocks. With breaking morning, when a veil of mist rises above the loch to hide water from sky, he melts into the rivers of mud that roll down the mountains until next year, when he will be reborn once again in the rain. Liam swore he'd seen the Pumpkin King once, the year he'd come up with their grandmother in October, and she'd insisted he go trick-or-treating in town. That must have been a year or two before the last time they'd all come together, and the only time he'd come to the cabin without Isla. She'd been so mad she wasn't allowed to come, but she remembered her mum saying Liam needed some time away from home, in the fresh air. He'd brought her back a bag of tablet that he'd gotten while trick-or-treating. She can still remember the excitement of unwrapping the ribbon and opening the paper bag, the creamy soft crumble of the tablet on her tongue, and Liam's smile as she bit into it. Was that the first year Liam had told her the tale of the Pumpkin King? She felt like it was a story she'd always known. A branch tapped lightly against the window, and Isla can feel the cold wind blow through. She wanders closer to the window and stares out at the water. The rain has stopped now, and she can see the loch only meters from the cabin window. Pebbles of pink, pearl and iron grey line the water's edge, and beyond this, the loch's icy clear waters, dark and still, reflect the light steel grey of the sky and the murky green of the moss-covered mountains. A reflection ripples at the edge of the water, and she sees Liam's face staring out at her. As he smiles, the Pumpkin King flashes across his face. Then, just as quickly, the Pumpkin King is gone, and Liam is gone, and she is staring at the dark water once again. This place is magical, and she's glad to be visiting again. Maybe it's not carefree anymore, but it is magical. Introduce our next reader. So I'm very happy to introduce Stephanie. Stephanie McGrath is, in no particular order, a fascinating, weird, convivial anomaly. From her formative years in the early 2000s, raised by the slam poetry scene, to following her outlawish family's footsteps deep into the cannabis world of Northern California. Now she spends time sitting at her desk, digging into what makes a computer tick, working as a software engineer, for a music streaming service in Oakland, California. Learning from a young age to thrive using her resourcefulness and curiosity, Stephanie writes from a place of adventure and reflection. Quarantining with her dog, Madame Koto, and praying to all the gods that Agent Orange does not see another 4 years, all the while trying to lose herself in her own story. That's where you'll find Mrs. McGrath. Over to you.
Thank you, Keely. So I'm going to read an excerpt from a book that I'm working on. So it's not done yet, and it might be left off in a place where you'll have a lot of questions, but you'll just have to read my book when it comes out. Okay. Having just spent the last 5 months working and living in a little beach town on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, all the while trying to mend my first broken heart, I'm now back in California trying to mend the years of silence between my mother and I. It is still dark outside as the first alarm I've heard in months goes off. I look at the time, trying to calculate if I can afford a few rounds of the snooze button. Instead, I decide a non-rushed cup of coffee and a cigarette are more enticing than a few extra minutes of sleep. The perfect pairing of caffeine and nicotine. I'm settling for coffee this morning so as to not appear difficult or fussy. Packed carefully away in my luggage is my preferred South American tea and its elaborate setup, which I sense makes my mother uncomfortable in its foreignness. Sipping the last of the coffee-covered sugar at the bottom of my mug, I go through my mental checklist of what I will need for this all-day outing to one of the biggest flea markets in the area. Flea markets are a happy place for my mom and I. It is also mutual ground for distraction, so nothing too deep comes up in conversation. Heading to the outskirts of Sacramento, I am told it has been decided that I'm getting an overdue birthday present. Although at this age it seems unnecessary, I have realized over the years that this is my mother's love currency, and lacking many substantial forms of love from her, I will gladly accept this gesture. There is a patience to planning our experience, wanting to see the most of what the market has to offer with a minimal amount of backtracking through the stalls. We map out our preferred course and agree on starting with a promising aisle of well-curated booths, boasting vintage rugs and furniture wrapped in velvet floral print. My main focus is the vintage clothing and maybe a few random oddities that bring me joy. I soon discover that my mother is not the ideal vintage shopping clothing partner. When asked, "What do you think?" I continue to get a half smile and slight nods of confusion. My last effort was to show her a dress that seemed to remind her of something she wore 20 years ago and gladly purged from her closet. I switch gears and start looking through the shelves of bits and bobs lining the stall border. At last, I get genuine laughter when I show her a set of Santa Claus Matryoshka dolls. On my mom's next of many trips to the bathroom, which she loves to remind me I am at fault for as I was her last born and her weak bladder is on me, I will circle back and get the wooden stacking Santas for her Christmas present. Feeling accomplished, I begin to visually take things in with ease, questioning what is buried under certain stacks of old fabric, or asking the stall owners the purpose of the random contraptions they have displayed with pride. At first, I don't see it. To me, it just looks like a stack of bikes leaning against the wall. Somehow, my brain registers an extra wheel or a missing wheel in a tangle of spokes and rubber. Intrigued, I start shifting the stacks this way and that. And right when I think to myself, this is not the best idea as I'm juggling 5 random bikes, there it is, a beautifully beaten up but fully functioning unicycle. I had been spending the last year or so learning to spin fire, convinced that it was a sultry, grown and sexy sort of expression. Now, here I am staring at this unicycle with all of my runaway with the circus dreams as a child bubbling up. Just as I am untangling the unicycle, my mom comes stumbling over to me with a very large stack of towels, a whole set of towels with a vintage motif of brown stained glass and butterflies. Had I been in a domesticated mood, my mom would have been spot on. They were amazing, all the way down to the little washcloths. The thing is, I was still heartbroken and had to come to peace with leaving a relationship and a home we had shared for the last few years. I was not even thinking of settling down, and certainly not thinking about a bathroom theme to display these towels in. I also knew I was about to go on another adventure up into the Mendocino Mountains, off the grid, to learn how to become a cannabis trimmer. Both of these truths I kept silently tucked away from my mom. If she couldn't understand my choice in clothing, how was she ever going to understand my choice in men, or my choice in a skill that I saw as lucrative and very illegal at the time. Flea markets tend to be the land of no price tags. This is intentional, as they are also the land of negotiating. Before locating the vendor to begin the negotiations, I ask my mother what her limit will be for the towels. She says she's not interested in spending more than $50. Immediately, a plan starts to hatch in my mind as we locate the right person and begin the ritual. My mother opens with, "How much for the set of towels?" He replies, $30. My mom immediately says, "Will you take 20? Whenever you try to negotiate, you are going to have to hear a personal story from the seller about some sentimental memory attached to the item or how much it will sell for in a fancy vintage store. As the seller begins his tale for the set of butterfly towels, I quietly go to collect what I really want, the unicycle. I wheel it over to where my mother is patiently listening to his ramblings, and I'm fighting back laughter at the confusion or maybe fear on her face. I need her to take me seriously as I try to negotiate both the towels and the unicycle for the bottom price of $50. It is definitely fear I see on her face, and the thing is, I know exactly what memory is playing out in my mother's mind. When I was 4 years old, I had been working really hard, learning to ride a bike, and my goal was to get those little squeaky training wheels off as soon as possible. After all, I was not a baby, and my older sister had been riding without her training wheels for a few months now. Convincing my mother I was ready, she gave me the ground rules as she brought out the wrench. I don't remember most of them, but the one that was made very clear was that I was to never ride my bike down the gravel hill when coming home from our neighbor's place. This is an absolutely reasonable demand, as we lived at the bottom of a very steep, bumpy gravel road with ditches on both sides and scattered dried out imprints of puddles from the last heavy rain. But I had other plans, and without training wheels, I was convinced that I could do anything. My sister, being 1 year and 26 days older than I, led to many competitive moments. Now, with no training wheels, I had the chance to do something she was terrified of. I had been secretly mapping out my route for the last week or so, memorizing all of the potholes and rocks, concluding that as long as I stayed somewhere in the middle of the dirt road, I could successfully ride down this hill. My chance to embody Evel Knievel had finally arrived a few days later as my sister and I were heading home from our neighbors. I had a blind ambition as I got on my bike on the top of that hill. My sister looked at me in disbelief, and the last words I heard from her were, "Mom said no." Everything seemed to be going according to plan as I shot down the hill squealing with delight when the sensation of flying had hit my stomach. Somewhere halfway down the hill, my ego got the best of me, and I had to look back to make sure my sister saw how well I was doing. Assured I would see a look of amazement, I remember being disappointed when I saw her stern, "I'm going to tell Mom" face, which instantly flashed into a face of terror. Just then, everything slowed down, and as I turned my head back around to see the road underneath me had changed, I was now in the ditch and I was approaching a very large rock. I didn't even have time to think about a maneuver that I would get me back safely on the road before my bike and I flipped into the air. Somewhere in that flip, my hands and my body let go, seeing nothing good coming from landing tangled up in a little blue bike that my uncle brought all the way back from Korea for me. Taking my chances for a solo landing, I somehow flipped again over the handlebars. The sensation of flying quickly came to an end now, and I was just skidding down the dirt road on my face, chest, and hip, trying not to cry out as I came to a stop in front of our driveway. The tears, pain, and fear all came bubbling up at once as I crumpled into a sobbing heap, my mother and sister both reaching me at the same time. Once we sorted through all the blood and gravel decorating the front of my body, Mom concluded that nothing seemed to be broken, and with a relieved sigh, she quietly carried me to the bathroom to start picking the rocks out of my skin. My sister is sent to hunt down the peroxide for the painful disinfectant part that I can't cry my way out of. Surprisingly, I wasn't yelled at or lectured. I think my mom decided the universe had disciplined me enough, and the following month or so of healing scabs would be a constant reminder. Back in the flea market, we finally get the vendor to agree to give us a set of towels and the unicycle for the glorious price of $50. After getting the tire of the unicycle pumped up by the vendor as proof that it is ready to ride, Mom and I are happy to call it a day, both emotionally drained from past memories and future worries. On the ride home from the market, I still sense worry in my mom's demeanor. I tell her I will wear knee and elbow pads, that I will be careful, and I promise to never go down a steep hill on the unicycle. This last promise is returned with a resigned chuckle as she calls her mom to share our adventure and have someone on her side to scold me for my danger-seeking adventures. Getting scolded by my grandmother is always an endearing experience. Just hearing her say my full legal name brings a feeling of worry wrapped in love. She's not amused upon hearing that I've decided to do another outrageous thing. She then makes me promise not to do that fire thing while riding the unicycle. As her scolding loses steam, she trails off with, "You are just like my grandma Estelle." Thank you. That's it. I'm going to move on and introduce our wonderful Anu Nagaraj. Anu is a writer, activist, and consultant who has actively worked with nonprofit organizations and schools for over 20 years. As a licensed psychotherapist who has been practicing in the Bay Area for over 10 years, she has worked with survivors of trauma and has led programs for youth in extended foster care. She is currently working on her first book of short stories. Anu lives in Oakland around a diverse community of friends and family.
Hi, everyone. All right. So let's see. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. Okay. So I've titled this Love Letters, and here I go. Ria, a 30-year-old woman, is writing a letter to her mother after a terrible argument they had the night before. April 19th, 2019. Hey, Mom. I'm sitting at the kitchen table as I write this letter to you. There's a beautiful full moon lighting up the sky. I'm up at an incredibly early time this morning. It's so dark outside and hauntingly quiet. I cannot sleep. That was one of the worst arguments we've had. Last night, we both said some really mean things to each other, and I feel awful about how we left things. It hurts me that we don't get along well much of the time. We continuously argue about the same things, but how I'm getting older, how much you want me to be happily married, and how much you want me to be making more money. You say the same things over and over again to me. I want you to be very happy. I want you to know how much you are truly worth. Don't be like me. Yes, I've heard you say that many times. Don't be like me. I've heard you say that most of my life. You've repeated this mantra since I was in middle school. Unfortunately for you, I am a lot like you. But fortunately for me, I'm like you, but within an upgraded package. Mom, I understand your concerns about my happiness and of my future, but the repetition of everything, your frustrations and disappointments in me often feel too much. It feels extra heavy due to all of your wounding. This is your life. This is my life, not yours. You raised me to be independent. You raised me to question everything around me and to not settle. You taught me to think differently and openly. You taught me to be empathetic, caring, and fight for what is right. I am all of these things due to your love, attention, and guidance. And I've never been in want of anything because of you. I did not have to fight for your love and attention. It's always been there. I've always felt safe and secure. You've given me everything you did not have much of when you were growing up. And I know that the deep wounding you feel comes from the lack of connection you had with your own parents. I think about your childhood and how vastly different it is from your upbringing and experiences. Specifically, I think about your relationship with your own mom and how it must have been growing up. With so many older siblings, you were forgotten. You weren't taken care of by your parents. Just briefly thinking about this, I feel lost and overwhelmed. So I can only imagine how that was for you as a young child, especially knowing what I know about you and your needs. I know things haven't been easy for you. You barely knew your parents as you had only begun living with them during your high school years. Before that, you were shuttled around from sibling to sibling and house to house. I know you started feeling lonely at a very young age. You had a deep yearning to be loved and cared for by your mom. Rather than having myself or my brother feel anything less, you've showered us with so much love. I often felt and still feel suffocated and held too tightly by the amount of attention and love you show. I know I shouldn't complain about being overly loved, but sometimes it's a lot for my independent self to handle, especially your love, which sometimes feels so heavy from all the pain you feel. Maybe it wouldn't be so much if you had been given the love and attention you needed. And with all of these thoughts swirling around in my mind, I often think about the letters you should have sent to your mother after you moved to the US, about the conversations you should have had. I think about my grandmother, a woman I did not know and had only seen twice in my life before her passing. She's an enigma to me. She was such a strong woman who was obedient to her husband, showed so much love and care to her male children and their wives. She also showered her grandchildren with so much love through her cooking, storytelling, and nurturing ways. You and your older sisters, on the other hand, were not in my grandmother's attention. You were the other kids, the outsiders. You were burdens and not gifts. I know this has stuck with you from an early age, and you've felt unwanted and unloved. You've carried this baggage with you into your arranged marriage that you did not want, into the move you had to make from India to the US, and into motherhood. Mom, I often think about the if-onlys. If only your mother had made more of an effort to show you love. If only your mother had listened to your words and had paid attention to the tears you've shed for her. If only if you did not have to argue and fight with your mom to get the attention you deserved. If only your mother did not push you into a marriage that you did not want. If only you did not have to leave your family and country a few months after marriage. Maybe these conversations could have brought some sort of peace within your fragile soul. I imagine these conversations through the letters you would have sent each other after you moved to the States. I imagine her calling you Ammi, a term of endearment used within the family, and you calling her Amma, mother. If only, if only, if only. Love, Ria. January 24th, 1975. Ammi, I have not heard from you since you moved 3 months back. Are you okay? Call me or write back as soon as you get this. Your Amma. February 16th, 1975. Dear Amma, it is very cold here. I did not bring the right outfits for this weather. I thought it'd be like home, like it is in Bangalore, but it's not. Rohan finally took me shopping last month after having asked him many times since moving here. Until then, I was feeling very cold. Now I have a thick jacket I wear all day, every day. You will be happy to know I'm learning how to cook. I'm using the recipe book Cousin Raji sent with me. But shopping and cooking alone isn't easy here. The market is very different, and there are so many types of vegetables I've never heard of. It is lonely here. Rohan is at work all of the time. When he comes home, I have dinner ready for him. He watches sports on television while eating dinner. I've tried talking with him, but he does not seem interested in talking or getting to know me. How is everyone? Please tell Appa I said hi. I miss him very much. Love, your daughter. March 10th, 1975. Ammi, as a wife, you need to take care of your house well. Make sure to listen to Rohan. Don't argue with him like you argue with me and your Appa. Don't make your husband upset. I'm sure things will get better. Give him time to get used to you. And remember, things will get better once you have kids. For now, take care of the house and improve your cooking skills. The grandkids are keeping me busy. Your cousin Sapna will be giving birth soon, so we are all excited about it. I'm getting ready to go over to their house next week to help set things up and to help after the baby is born. Everyone is doing well here. Your Amma. April 5th, 1975. Dear Amma, I'm so happy for Sapna, but so sad to have missed the birth of the baby. Was it a boy or a girl? I think a baby would bring me joy. I will need to talk with Rohan about having a baby soon. I am sure a baby will make things better for us. But I do wish Rohan cared for me the way Appa cares for you. Rohan is still not talking to me, and I am feeling very lonely. Though I've made a couple of friends in the community, I still do not feel like I belong in this home. I do have some good news. You'd be so proud of my cooking. I'm cooking daily and I'm getting familiar with all of the vegetables in the market. I followed one of your recipes and it came out well. It was not as delicious as your cooking, but it was good. I'm happy with the improvements I'm making, and Rohan eats whatever food I make him. I'm missing everyone right now. I also miss you very much. I wish I was back home. Love, your daughter. June 2nd, 1975. Ami, I've been busy taking care of the grandchildren. There is so much cooking to do. It reminds me of the time before independence, when the house was always full of freedom fighters, writers, and philosophers. I cooked so much for everyone who dropped by the house day in and day out. How are things with Rohan? Is it improving? Are you pregnant? Have a child as soon as possible. Your Amma. July 1st, 1975. Dear Amma, I was waiting for you to write and was so happy when I received your letter. I was worried your letter had been lost. I'm cooking most of the day and I continue to improve. A friend says I'm very good. I wonder what you would think if you tried my cooking. Things are the same with Rohan. I've not been bothering him with my concerns, nor have I argued with him. I've tried talking with him about wanting kids, but he does not listen to me. I will give him more time, like you mentioned in a previous letter. I hope things will change. I have been feeling ill this week. I'm getting a lot of headaches and I'm feeling very fatigued. I've started taking Tylenol to rid of the pain, but that has not been helping. I'll be going to the doctor next week if I do not feel better soon. I'll let you know how I'm feeling next week. I will ask Rohan if I can make a phone call to you after the appointment. Love, your daughter. And that's all I have so far. Okay. All right, so I'll be introducing the next writer, or the next author. Andrea Reta. A first-generation child of Ethiopian immigrants, Andrea is breaking generational traumas while honoring her cultural roots. Andrea has worked hard to create a life that honors her ancestors and is now focused on her journey towards self-actualization. Andrea has chosen to tell the stories of those who greatly impacted her life. A SoCal native currently living in LA, approaching the 33rd year of life, Andrea is excited to see what this next chapter has in store. The lovely Andrea.
Thank you. All right, so this piece is called Mama Mulu. It's the story of the first time that my grandmother, my mother's mother, and I met after a long journey from Ethiopia to America. I will begin. I remember the day we met. It was a sunny day in early spring. Bright lights filled up the house from every angle. Family and friends had traveled from near and far to see you. They had been arriving all week with sleeping bags in tow. There were not enough rooms for all the bodies. So instead, they occupied every inch of the floor in anticipation of this momentous day. Daddy and the other men had already journeyed in caravans to LAX airport to receive you, a 70-mile drive from our small town home in Ontario, California. Meanwhile, Mommy and her friends were preparing a delicious feast for your arrival. Layers of the fragrant aromas were dancing invisibly in the air to the vibrant, celebratory tunes of Mommy's favorite singer, Mohammed Ahmed. The spicy scent of barbare with the all too familiar smell of nut shunkurt, the sweet smell of freshly baked dabbo with the slightly pungent gusho. You could smell and hear this labor of love from a block away. Mommy and Daddy dressed Rachel and I in our matching puffy white lace dresses and our LA Gear sneakers. Since Daddy would be home soon, we were not allowed to play outside in the neighborhood. So we were bound to the backyard, with only a screen door separating us from the action inside. They had been talking about your arrival for weeks. We were kind of excited to meet you, but also preoccupied with our mud pies and ladybugs to care too much. As Rachel and I squabbled over the best way to catch ladybugs, we heard the door swing open and quickly turned our attention to the inside. Daddy walked in with 2 large brown leather suitcases in his hands. As he struggled to cross the threshold, carrying your whole life in those bags, they hit the floor with a terrific thud. It felt like a mini earthquake erupted, signaling the end of your journey and your arrival to your new home. You walked in and stood in the doorway with your beautiful kameez, a long white dress with a colorfully woven pattern on the front. Your hair was covered, with gold jewels dangling from your ears. Despite your long journey from Ethiopia to California, you looked as lovely as Mommy when she goes to church. It felt like we were watching a movie as Rachel and I stood behind the screen door, witnessing each interaction unfold. You remained perfectly still, standing regally in the doorway as everyone in the house quietly gravitated towards you. Without taking a single step, you scanned the room in search of Lijish, your firstborn. The silence felt like it got louder as you locked eyes with Mommy. In that moment, the unwanted separation between mother and daughter became palpable. Your maternal instincts were activated, and your first steps were marked as you leaped forward and grabbed your daughter, my mother, in your arms and covered her in your embrace. As the two of you stood in the doorway, I could hear you both sobbing. A combination of anguish and relief. Anguish due to the time lost and the collective suffering you both felt because of the distance brought on by the military junta that ruled the country. And also relief. Relief that your fears of being apart forever would no longer be realized, and that you could finally be together again, with nothing to stand in your way. In between your sobs, I could hear you bemoaning, Lidje, 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 my child, my child, my child. You pulled back to look at her face. You kissed her cheeks and hugged her again. This continued for what felt like an eternity. After being lost in each other's embrace, Mommy realized you both were still standing in the doorway, with all eyes on you. She wiped the tears from your eyes and then her own, and grabbed your hand and gently ushered you into the living room of our small town home. The silence in the house finally broke. Light chatter commenced, and Rachel said it was our cue to come inside. I followed behind her, letting Big Sister lead the way. I was a little nervous and even slightly weepy to see my Mommy cry. Mommy directed you to the couch. You held her hand tightly as you were not quite ready to let go, but were willing to draw your attention elsewhere if she remained near. You noticed that bodies began shuffling around the house. You sat upright on the black velvet sofa, and everyone began to form a line in front of you, waiting for their chance to greet you. One by one, they went from standing to kneeling before you, yearning for a chance to look into your eyes and experience your embrace. It was not every day that a mother came to visit her child in America, and in that moment, you were the embodiment of all of the mothers they were forced to leave behind. Everyone that journeyed to see you had the same story as Mommy. All of them were refugees that fled Ethiopia, forced to leave a family behind, with a decade worth of memories and experiences untold, with only a handful of letters between them. On this day, the void brought on by the absence of their mother's love felt smaller. One by one, you gave a piece of yourself to everyone in your path, with kindness in your heart and a loving smile. As the line got shorter, the room felt lighter. The nervousness I felt had dissipated, but I held onto Rachel's hand until it was our turn to experience your life-changing embrace. We were last in line due to our age. As our turn approached, side by side we stood before you. You paused, placing your hands on your mouth in disbelief. You looked towards Mommy for confirmation. As you turned back to us, your eyes were filled with tears. You placed your hands on the outside of our shoulders. In silence, you stared at us with your beautiful blue-gray eyes. You reached forward and wrapped your arms around us both and began to cry. You called out words that we did not fully understand. Noticing the blank stares on our face, you grabbed our hands, placed them on your heart, and said, Mama Mundo. That is my piece. Thank you. So now I have the privilege of introducing Grace Kress. She is an artist and activist from London, UK. She recently founded Shelby X Studios, which merges art and activism to build community, create resources, and share information that counters harmful mainstream narratives. She believes that in order to dismantle systems of oppression, we need to be able to imagine a world without them. Shelby X Studios helps us to envision what the world looks like. She is launching a new Art X activism e-zine in January 2021, which she will write for alongside commissioned, accessible, educational, and motivational content inspired by artivists such as Sylvia Pankhurst, Frida Kahlo, and Emily Douglas. The design aims to help to use the arts as a tool to strengthen revolutionary culture.
Hi. I'm definitely a little bit nervous, so I'll try not to get too emotional on this one. I'm going to try and share my screen because there's a bit of artwork that goes along with this. So can everybody see that? Is it still there? Yeah.
I can see it. Is there anyone who cannot see it?
Okay. Okay. This Art Times Activism zine is a tribute to Brad Kress, my father, comrade, and best friend, and to everyone who is grieving right now. My wish is that you find a slice of motivation within these pages, the kind that makes you feel as if the sun is on your cheek and hope is on the horizon. Happy Mother's Day, Dad. I'm sorry I haven't written sooner. I thought about writing, but I just never really knew what to say. I didn't write you, but I drew. I hope you got my drawings. I hope one of us playing on that rooftop under the shooting stars, or the one of the sun rising over the Brooklyn Bridge while we eat Dunkin' Donuts down by the water. What about the one where you lift me in your arms and we throw messages of solidarity on paper planes over those immigration detention bars? How about the one of us at the kitchen table where I'm eating a giant bowl of Cheerios and you're pouring a glass of that pure pressed Honeycrisp apple juice? I can't remember whether I like the taste of that or if I just like whatever you liked. Or the one of me wearing hand-me-down mismatched clothing as you push me in a buggy at the front of a demonstration with the Colin Rich Centre in Hackney. I pray you got the one where we're snuggled up in one of your quilts and you're reading us the Berenstain Bears. That one is my favourite. We all slept in bed under that quilt the night you left too. Your absence felt like an unexpected draft, and no matter how much I wriggled, I couldn't get my feet warm. When I woke up, I felt as if the dream had seamlessly continued. I was floating out at sea, paralysed in a pool of salty tears. The water lapped over me, crashing against the rocks and consuming everything in its path. I tried to hold on, but there was nothing really to grasp. I wished you were there to wrap me up in that huge towel you warmed on the radiator. Is this what you felt like that hot, sticky summer when your best friend died by suicide? Like a wave of emotion was swallowing you whole, like you'd lost something you knew you'd never find, as if the shivers had become you and your throat would be locked closed to air forever. I drew lots to you then. For hours and hours and hours I drew. I dived into the creases of your brow and the dimples of your smile. I got lost in liberation literature and rooted for the hope you'd found. Did you find it in moves unity throughout the decade of resistance, about the fact that Kwame Nkrumah walked down the very same streets as you? Or did the poetic memoirs of Maya Angelou breathe life into your soul? Maybe you found solace in George Jackson's ability to transcend time. Did the artistic expressions of Pankhurst, Carlo, Douglas, and Basquiat comfort you too? Were you captured by joy in your moments of movement and spellbound by watching Alvin Ailey's Grace? Or maybe it was in how music made you feel. Did you discover hope in the words of Tupac as he spoke directly to the pain? Or maybe it was Kalashnikov, Sizzler, and 1,000 volts of hope that got you through the day. Consciousness ran through my soul like an electric current, deepening the wounds still wide open from the injustice of losing you. What gauze could cover up these ruptures and heal all the scars? How would I ever drain away the pain? Just as you were stolen, so too was my faith that justice was even possible. What faith could exist when they stripped Indigenous people of their culture and colonized their lands, when they dropped atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when they gunned down children in Vietnam, when they vilified and murdered Patrice Lumumba, when they shot Fred while he slept in his bed, when they occupy the West Bank and Gaza, when they waged war in Iraq and Afghanistan despite millions of people protested in the streets. Mum bought me flowers to remind me that there was beauty in the world. I drew them so they would not die. Studying them made me think about the uniqueness in nature and how there would never be another you. I drew the solidness of the stems, contemplating ways to rip out the roots of imperialism. I outlined the delicate petals through my rage, making sure not to crush them with the weight of the pencil. That night, I looked in your quilt again, trying to compile my own patchwork pieces. I stitched memories together, creating small dresses for children that you will never meet. Each section dedicated to things that reminded me of you. Your voice rang in my head. Hey, sports fan, what you doing? I placed Arsenal, the Phillies and Orioles along the front with batting on the back. I embroidered roses to the bit Clavillon rose, laced with thorns like those Edith Piaf had endured. I wove in the fabrics of your motherland with bright burnt orange pumpkins, a shiny smiling sun and a gentle sleepy moon. I stenciled palm trees for your eternal life and leopards for your individuality. You've been gone so long now, sometimes I wonder if I dreamt you. But just like reoccurring dreams, I still see you from time to time. I see you when my sister types at her computer with pages of research scribbles you can unscatter to the table. I see you in the communities of care she builds up around us and that inquisitive look she gives me when I say something she's unsure of. I see you in the little ones too, you know. It's been like watching small seeds you planted grow, blooming even after you're gone. I see you in their features, their ringlets, their mischief, their scowls. I see you in the games we play that spark that innocent, contagious, uncontrollable kind of laughter that makes them bubble over with excitement. They like to be swung around just how you swung me. I am their playground just as you were mine. Do you remember how I would jump and climb and flip off you like Simba with Mufasa? I see you in people who knew you, their unrelenting commitment and determination for a world where we are all truly free. Free to express ourselves without the limitations of binaries and chains. Free to connect with one another just as roots connect with soil. Dad, I see you in the sky at night, shining like the moon. I see you in the sunrise, hope, I see you too. I see you in my mother's arms, full of love and joy. I see you in the Chesapeake Bay, 4 states east of Illinois. I see you in the stack of books that I'm reading all at once. I see you in the vivid colours throughout the autumn months. I see you in the summertime where the long nights must be. Dad, I see you in a lot of things. I see you in me.
Grace. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, you guys. Thank you, Grace. I know that was emotional. I can hear it. We have some time for people who want to ask questions. People have been leaving all these beautiful comments about how beautiful everyone's work is. But we have time if you want to go ahead and ask a direct question about the work that you've been hearing today. And we can just come off mute and give everybody a great round of applause and then go back on mute because this was great. Oh!
Amazing.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Oh my gosh. Who has a question? Let's see. Are there any questions? To Keely. Was the pumpkin story an original by your dad or a retelling? This is from Penn.
It was a retelling. So me and Grace are thinking about kind of writing a collection of stories about our dad. And I was reminded that he'd written a children's story, which we haven't found yet, but is definitely somewhere. And yeah, so that was, I'm not sure if my recollection of it is the same one he told, but yeah, I'm reimagining.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions about their process? Yes, Karen, English. I'm gonna take you off of mute.
Okay.
There you go.
I was wondering, was there a theme of travel or returning? And it seemed like that was in the story. So I was wondering if you had asked them to stick to a theme.
Oh no, I know, right?
It just happened that way then.
It just happened like everybody, it just comes out on the first day. People say what's the first thing on their mind in terms of a story that they're thinking about. Yeah. And then we just go with that. We start with that and then we build upon it. If they want to change it, they can, but it just so happens that, yeah, that was a recurring theme.
Because that's such a universal experience, you know, returning, trying to work things out, or immigrating, or the possibility of immigrating to a new place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were all amazing.
Well, it just so happens we have Betty, who's originally from Peru, Andrea, whose family is from Ethiopia, Anu, who's dealing with characters from another country, but this is just what they came up with.
Wow, it was good.
Thank you, Sharon. Penn says, never heard it before. Okay, to Stephanie, have you progressed on your unicycle? Have you progressed on your unicycle?
I actually got really good at it. Yes, I haven't ridden it in years. This all happened about 20 years ago. But yeah, I randomly met some circus person who was like, "Oh, I can teach you in 3 days," and so I was on the unicycle in 3 days, and yeah.
Any other questions for them? No other questions? Well, there were, let's see.
I was going to, I can't do the chat. I'm not sure how to do
it.
But
it's okay, go on. You don't have to do the chat. Go ahead.
Anu about the format of the letters, because that's such an interesting way to tell a story, and where she thought it might go from here.
Oh, thanks for asking. I didn't think I was going to get a question. So. I don't know. I just imagined it. Like, that's what I felt that it would, I just imagined that format when I just thought of it as just letters, and how, yeah, there's just so many things that are just unsaid. And so, yeah, just the beauty of letter writing, which, you know, I mean, now it's like email and all this, but just that idea too of like waiting for a letter. And I was just thinking too about like how expensive phone calls were back in like the 70s, and like, you know, international calls were insanely expensive. And so it's just, yeah, like airmail was the way to go. And yeah, just that immigrant experience of, being somewhere and all of that. I just felt that letters could portray that in a more meaningful way. And then just, I think just with more encouragement from, I think, this group of writers and Sia, yeah, just being able to see that, oh, that's not like a weird idea of writing it in a letter format, you know, that it's an interesting way of doing it. And so I was like, I think it's great, that idea of just kind of going with your instinct and your gut when it comes to writing, and like kind of see where that goes. And so really took that to heart with this. So yeah.
Someone said it was a good instinct. And the beauty of how we work together in small groups, so each of us the writers share ideas with each other. And so I think Grace had brought up the idea of the letters of George Jackson, and they kind of fleshed that out. And Anu was already doing letters, but then in the beginning, she was like, oh, I can add a letter even from a different character. So that was like, it's just interesting to see how it all builds like that. Okay. Someone says, let's see. So it was a good instinct, Penn says. Jason Richardson asks, for anyone here, where is your favorite place to write? And any author here that's a good question, Jason, because that's one of the things that's actually one of the focuses, right? One of our modules is creating that sacred space. Who would like to respond to that?
Can I respond to that?
Okay.
Well, okay. I have a room that was once a shared room of my two sons. I have two daughters and two sons. And I made it into an office, you know, with just everything conducive to writing. But I found that I write in the middle of my bed, sitting cross-legged. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's gone kind of to waste, because that's where I feel most comfortable, sitting in the middle of my bed. And I hate to say that, you know, CNN might be on at the same time. I know it's horrible, but yeah, that's where I write.
And for everyone to know, this is Karen English, and she's a prolific children's book author. So thank you for sharing where you write as someone who has such an extensive background in writing and publishing.
Yeah, that's where I feel comfortable.
Is there anyone else? Andrea or Keely, Steph, Anu, who'd like to share where they write?
Yeah, this is Anu. I can share. Well, right now I've been kind of like, I've been at my parents' house, and with that, like, I'm kind of going from bed to bed. So this was like, you know, whatever room is empty, kind of like, you know, and then just trying to find the most quietest space. But yeah, but in my place in Oakland, I find like my kitchen table, because I have like it's a one bedroom. So there's not much movement or not much space. And so the kitchen table, which I finally cleaned off, which is great. But I think like ideal, I'm like trying to think, I'm like, during a pandemic, what is ideal? I mean, I would love to be like at a coffee shop and like writing, but that's not really happening right now. So yeah, I'm trying to make my own little coffee shop wherever I go. So I always have a ton of coffee with me. That makes me happy. That makes me happy. So yeah.
This is Andrea. I find that I sort of go between my kitchen table and my couch in the living room. One thing that I've learned in this process is that I do absolutely need silence, background noise. I feel like it sort of blocks my thinking, and I start to sort of take in what I'm hearing in the room, and it sort of like gets all caught up in my head, so I can't have like sort of a clear thought process. But nothing else really special about where I've been writing. I've just been sort of trying to hold myself accountable. I think this book has been just so great for that, because time to write has been really challenging for me. But just making that time and doing it somewhere where I feel comfortable and where there's peace and quiet is everything for me so far.
Andrea, there's a few more questions. So someone commented that family and physical connection felt like a theme to them in everyone's writing. What do you do when you feel stuck? A few people have asked that question. Who would like to respond? Because, right, like on the first day, everybody was quote unquote stuck on the first day of class. I'm like, you know, what's your story? What do you want to write about? And then they start kind of tiptoeing around it. And then, you know, I help them get into the story. And then next thing you know, in 4 weeks, this is what you got. So how do you get unstuck? I see Stephanie smiling. You want to share? Oh, Andrea's mic is off. How do you get unstuck, Andrea?
I stop. I just stop and take a moment and walk away. For me, I just take it as a sign that I don't have something to say in this very moment or something to write in this very moment. And I don't punish myself for that feeling. If I feel stuck, then this is not the moment for me to be writing. And I found that that's worked well for me. So when I go back to it, and sometimes it just becomes a lot more free flowing, and I just sort of take that as an opening from God to say, like, here's your chance and go for it. When it's not flowing, then it's just like, take a pause and try again. So that's been my process.
Everyone here has like a lot of responsibilities aside from writing. And so that's also the point of the course is, how do we write with other responsibilities, and how do we forgive ourselves? How do we be kind to ourselves? And how do we get back to it when we do have to step away? So yeah, thank you, Andrea. Does anyone else want to share how they get through their blocks? So-called blocks, because that's another point of the course, is that we transform that concept of blocks, that it's not really a block. It's like, for Andrea, it's a time to step away, or it's a time to go walking, or it's a time to just do something else. It's not a block. When we think of it as a block, we think like, oh, that's the end of the road, it's an impasse. And so we're changing that paradigm, that mindset, so that, no, it's not a block, it's just not time right now, or a different method or a different strategy to use.
That actually reminded me of, I think you made a great point, Sia, of it's, you know, we, what is it? I can't even think right now. I have a mental block right now. No, it's basically that what you had said was, you know, that idea of habit and intention. And so I think that really helped me a lot, was kind of getting, you know, working through the block as well. There's this idea I think I had in my head that if I felt blocked, that or, you know, I just had this block around having like scheduled times, or kind of having a routine or a habit around writing. And so I think for me that actually helped with some of that quote unquote like writer's block. That actually helped me as well. And just like what Andrea was saying too about stepping away, like that's like such a good way of just kind of breaking up that energy. Yeah.
How about you, Karen? What do you do when you get blocked?
See, I didn't want to just keep, you know.
I know, and I won't ask you again. I'm just curious myself.
You know what? It's like, you know how a boxer, when you see him getting ready to go into the ring and he's doing all this stuff with his shoulders, and I find reading, like if I'm blocked, then I'll read someone else's work, and that fires you up. You know, writers have to be readers also. And it just fires you up when you see how other people are structuring their story. And yeah.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. Reading to help get through the blocks too. Yeah. How did you get into writing, and what inspires your pieces? Anyone can answer this. This is one of the questions. How did you get into writing, and what inspires your pieces? We haven't heard from Stephanie or Keely or Betty.
I think getting into writing was taking this workshop for me. I used to be a journal writer, but I never really thought about sitting down and writing stories. And I have a pretty crazy life, and my ancestors are just as crazy. And anytime I would tell my friends stories, they're just like, you got to write this down. This has to be a movie. This has to be a book. And I needed a new artistic outlet. There's a lot shifts when COVID happens, and my artistic outlet has always been dancing, and specifically partner dancing. So I can't do that right now. And I just needed something else. And you have a lot of time. I'm sitting here. This is where I write too. Like this is my little office. Yeah, so that's what inspired me. And I'm just really grateful that Sia came into my life and that this course was available, and I got to meet all these amazing women and just be on the journey with them. That isn't going to end in a week when our course ends. I know we're all going to be keeping in touch and reading each other's work and supporting each other. Mm-hmm. So it just feels like I got a new family.
Mm-hmm. Jason, you asked a question and I can't see it anymore. Did you want to unmute and ask it? Jason Richardson, if you're still there. Okay, maybe he's not still there. And then Betty, you've been writing something in the chat that I couldn't see the end of it. Did you want to say something, Betty? It was about writing in Spanish and all of that. Unmute. Can you unmute, or want me to unmute you? Oh,
okay. For me, writing in Spanish is a challenge. It has been a challenge and is a challenge. And of course, when I finish the story, I will need a proofreader for sure. But I think for me it's easy to write in general. I can write anything, really. At work, I write every day, of course, work things. But as far as I am in front of my computer, it comes out. The problem is the lack of time. So I try to commit myself 2 hours a day, but impossible. So now I'm thinking maybe 3 times a week in the evening after work, 1 hour, and maybe on the weekends. So that kind of schedule, I'm going to try to stick on it. And maybe in 1 year, this is my goal, in 1 year, have the book complete. And we will see if I publish it. And if it's good, I will continue writing for sure. Mm-hmm. I like to write.
Well, we have one last question. Jason asked, have you ever, okay, let me make sure I get it correct. Have you ever finished the end of a story before you were able to start the beginning of it or the middle of it? So basically, I guess, have you ever started at the end of a story? Does anyone want to respond to that? Stephanie and then Keely.
I don't even know if I'm in the middle or the end or the beginning of where I'm writing. I just started with like what was hitting hardest for me, like what memory just kept coming up the most for me. But I have no idea if it's going to be the very beginning of my book or in the middle, or it might be the end of the book. I don't know. So I'm not attached, I guess, to, yeah, that's for me though.
Mm-hmm. Keely, did you
add something?
Yeah, can Keely go first, and then you, Karen?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean the same. I think through this course, I've got lots of little bits of writing all over the place that I'm not sure how they fit together. But actually, for the bit that I read, I wrote the middle bit first. So the kind of retelling of the Pumpkin King story that my dad had wrote, and then other bits sort of fitted in. So I started writing something else. And then suddenly thought, oh, I think these 2 bits go together.
Thank you, Karen.
Actually, this helps with when you get stuck as well. Before you even start, now I know this is kind of unorthodox, and maybe not everybody can do it. They have other methods. Before you start, know generally what the ending is, and then you work toward it, because it gives you a map. And it gives you some structure. Know how you want it to end, and then you work toward that ending. So that's worked for me.
And then do the authors have any last words before we conclude? Stephanie?
Thank you, everybody, for listening and being here. And this was great.
Thank you. Harbin says, I love listening to all the writers. Oh, not Harbin, this is Simeon. I love listening to all the writers. This was a very enjoyable start to my Sunday morning. 1,000 blessings to you all.
I think it was an amazing session. I love it. And you have a very good group of writers.
Ready? Tip says, great.
Thank you very much.
Writing.
Thank you to you, Thea. I appreciate you and all of your encouragement in getting us to this point.
Oh, thank you, Andrea. This group is so, I always say they're so calm. They're so calm, they're so easygoing, and they're just like, let's see, Penn says, I'm so grateful to be a part of this. Thanks every single one of you. Very entertaining way to spend my evening. I guess this person is in the UK. I demo something, like to attend another, I definitely like to attend like to attend another one of these. Okay, Penn, whoever your author is, I'll make sure they keep you in the loop. All right, London, yes, London town. Thank you.
Yeah, and just thanks again, Mercy, because everything's just been so amazing. And like, I've never really written before, but have learned so much. And it's just been a great experience. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, this has been amazing. This is the first time I've ever like read anything of mine. I'm very like private about it, but yeah, so this has been a great experience for sure. So thank you, Sia, and thank you everyone. Like, this has just been amazing to just feel more confident and just so supportive. Like, I'm really excited that we're going to continue meeting, as writers.
And so just kind of echoing what everybody said, like, thank you for an amazing course, and thank you to all of the amazing women and writers who are on it with me, and it's been great to kind of hear your work and learn from you, and thank you to everyone who came and listened to us today.
Yes, and we have from Sophie saying, you were all amazing. Sharifa, such a fantastic morning. Thank you all. And Charo, very amazing, very nice. I want to see the books. And Lily, so happy I got to hear everyone's stories. Thank y'all for sharing. Oh, wait, another one. We were still gathering for the last class on Tuesday. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, we were still, yes, Betty. Betty's wanting to know about the future. Oh, thank you so much for being here, for supporting your authors and your writers. If you'd like to know anything more about the course, please, you can reach me. Just ask your author, the person who invited you, and they can put you in touch with me. And I enjoyed hearing everyone. And my name is Marcia Gabriel. I don't know if I said that, so. Okay. Yay, thank you.